course.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's convene the meeting, and I think there's a very important message that I have to read. Let me see. This meeting will not be physically open to the public. The meeting will be broadcast via teleconferencing or other electronic means. In order to minimize the spread of COVID-19, this regular meeting will be conducted pursuant to the provision of the governor's executive order N-2920, which suspend certain requirements of the Brown Act. All members of the subcommittee will be participating in the meeting remotely via teleconferencing or other electronic means. Consistent with Executive Order N-2920, if you would like to provide public comment, we encourage you to submit them via email to the city clerk. And that email address is iwerby@ci.cloverdale, cloverdale.ca.us. Please refer to the end of the agenda for instructions on how to view the meeting and provide public comment. So with that being said, if everybody's ready, why don't we go ahead and call the meeting to order and let the records reflect the attendees who have logged in. Communications, David, I guess just a letter from Bob is, did you want to say anything about that?
Mayor, Chair, I don't have any specific comments. We obviously are receiving a lot of communications from Mr. Kozlowski, who I think was generated in response to us bringing forward a proposal or proposed discussion on an all-electric code. I think he obviously has submitted quite a bit of documentation that suggests that may not be feasible based on some of the research that he's conducted, and he's really submitted quite a bit of documentation to support his premise. At this time, we haven't dedicated or pursued additional resources to furthering the conversation around the all-electric code after kind of the one workshop, and I'm not sure at this time that we'll continue that. It's kind of on hold just because we're really dedicating a lot of our staff time to the current emergency, and then we can revisit that, I think, at the appropriate time. But if there's any direction that the subcommittee wants us to provide, happy to follow up with Mr. Kozlowski, or we can bring it back to council for further conversation if you think that would be helpful. But we've kind of held off on putting major discussion items like that on the agenda.
Yeah, and I have to agree. He's very thoughtful when he pens a letter, and he definitely lays out all the key points. But I just think right now it has to take a back burner. And Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sorry, David, correct me if I'm wrong. There's no time period on that, is there, for us to adopt the REACH code?
No, I'll defer to Kevin. We've met our timeline by adopting the triennial code. This was really a supplement that is beyond the minimum required by the California State Building Commission. So there's no real significance to pushing it forward, sooner rather than later. It was really, I think, to maybe give advance notice to future developers that if this was council direction and in wanting to implement this policy, that their projects would be subject to might be subject to this. But other than that, there's no real timeline crunch associated with putting this aside for the time being.
Okay. Mary Ann, do you have anything? Do you agree we should put it aside for now?
I think it should go so far on the bottom of the list that it's unseeable.
Okay.
Where I left it was I was going to do another workshop. We did the one. So I was going to do another one and then bring forward something to council, but
Oh,
obviously.
no hurry at all. As far as I'm concerned, especially if we're going to be facing more shutoffs, which we know we are, to not even have gas or even to presume that this is going to not be the new normal, I think is ridiculous. So way down on the list for me, if not at the bottom. I don't care when you come back to council with it.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Maybe in 3 years.
Okay. That sounds good. All right. Let's move along to public comment. Anyone wishing to address the subcommittee on items that do not appear on this agenda may do so. Of course, you would have to email them to our city clerk. So please feel free to do that, even though I'm going to close the public comment. If we get them in, we'll address them as they come in. So with that being said, let's move on to approval of the minutes, February 21st.
I'll move approval.
Okay, I'll go ahead and second that. So let the records reflect they're approved. Next is current items for discussion, and there's A through F. And it looks like we could take them in any order as staff sees fit. We can just bounce around. It's entirely up to you. So David, I'm going to turn the first one, I guess, over to you, which is climate change, sustainability, projections. Is that you or Kevin?
Well,
Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
I'll let Kevin can, he's going to give you an overview of where we stand on this item.
Yeah, so we this was a change made by the previous planning subcommittee to add sustainability. And what we discussed at the first meeting of this current subcommittee was that we would take a look at the emergency resolution adopted by the council late last year and kind of go through those things. Maybe you could scroll down, Irene. There's a number of things that we're saying that we're going to do and to help fight climate change. So what I was thinking, if this is okay with the subcommittee, is we could just either today or we can take this home with us and do it at the next meeting, but we can go through some of what was suggested in this resolution and see which ones seem plausible, which one, if there's any interest by committee members, or if you know someone in the community who might be interested in doing some of these, sort of maybe rank these, move some to the top, figure out which ones make sense that we could actually work on, and then continue to report back at future meetings. So there's a few pages here. So I don't know. My thought was we could maybe go through some of these tonight or today, excuse me, and see if there's any interest by committee members. Or again, if you would rather, you could take it and we can put it forward for the next meeting.
Yeah. Mary Ann, what do you desire?
We can sort of look through these a little bit if you like, but again, it's not our first priority right now. And I don't want staff focusing on something like this during this crazy time we live in. We've accomplished a few of them, I noticed already.
Well, Kevin, can you just highlight maybe 2 or 3 of the most significant ones that you see on the list here?
Yeah, can you scroll down? I don't have, hang on, I'm trying to pull it up here on my other computer. I mean, some of these are pretty easy. Like, for example, the first one, using our social media platform to promote. Hang on, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get it on this other computer.
That's all right, Kevin. Take your time.
Yeah. Okay, I have it here now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, zoning. Let's start at the top. So, social media things. I mean, David handles most of our social media posts. but that's something that we could certainly do. That's not really too painful or expensive. But just going through real quick, the land use one, the SB2 grant, we did receive the SB2 grant. We're just waiting for some paperwork to get that in motion. Also, we'll be coming forward to the council with a proposal for what we're going to do. We talked about some broad ideas around the SB2 funding. So that one's certainly moving forward.
What are they?
Well, they you can see here, it was going to focus.
We can't see Kevin.
I can't see. It's not on the right place.
Okay, can you scroll down a little, Irene? Get out of here.
Kitty, 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 kitty.
All day. Okay, so here we go. So we're going to get a little bit more, Irene, because I think there's a little more on the next page. Yeah. So we brought forward this idea before we applied for the grant that we would take a look at the downtown zoning and the transit-oriented development zoning. These are just some broad ideas, looking at parking standards, increasing density, trying to, incentivize more residential uses downtown where people can actually walk to their daily needs. So that's one of the ones under land use on this resolution that is already underway. So that one's certainly one we can do.
Can I do one input real quick?
Yeah.
I would hope that you would not just focus on downtown and the transit-oriented development districts. I think if we're going to increase density, that it's going to have to be kind of across the board.
Yeah.
In some of the other zonings too, because right now, any kind of accessory dwelling units we can get in, anytime we can incentivize a project for low-income housing to increase density, that's a great thing.
Yeah.
I know that's got some kind of a pocket all of its own in, but I think it's long past time that we look at the zoning in this town because it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. One of the things was I think it's only 140,000. So we haven't fully defined the scope, but what's listed here is what we used to get the state to agree to give us the funding. So as long as it really increases housing, that's their main goal out of this grant. There's still some flexibility to change it. This is what we kind of pitched to the council, again, focusing on downtown and transit, because I think it was more about the scope of the amount of money they were offering. And we were discussing with consultants who will ultimately do the work, what could be the scope given the amount of money.
Got you. Okay,
So,
I get it. I get it.
Yeah. There still may be some ways to expand it out. The other thing is we are going to be redoing our housing element in a couple years, and the state has added many different layers to that. It's not going to be a simple slam dunk as it has been in the past. So they are going to be requiring and to do some things to make it easier to construct housing, along with their pretty much annual or biannual legislation that comes through that kind of makes us change the zoning. But yeah, I mean, that's certainly we can consider that when we get into the the meat and bones of the scope of work that we're going to be looking for with this money. So that one's kind of underway.
Well, before we get off of that one, Kevin, with this current pandemic, I'm hoping that we see more work from home situations, more companies adopting something along those lines. And I'm not sure if anything we could adopt into the building code where maybe, it has to be wired with certain fiber optics. I mean, I know that's a changing technology, or, it's got to be big enough to have a small office and they get points for that. Just thinking about what's going to come out of this current situation, how do we adopt the needs for the next one in our housing codes, or do we even have to?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point, and I think it could really help Cloverdale if people could work from home. I mean, that's one of our disadvantages is our proximity to job centers. I've been thinking about that for a long time, but we can think of ways to, creatively, maybe entice developers to include things that make it easier to have a home office.
Right.
I could, the one that comes to mind, of course, is Baumgartner, who's, we have an opportunity to talk to him and see what his thoughts are and maybe condition something as such. I don't know. I haven't heard of any of that happening. So I'd have to maybe do a little research and see what's being done out there and what makes sense. But
Okay.
keep that in mind. Can you scroll down a little, Irene? Go down to
Kevin, if I can, while you're looking at the rest of the list, one of the larger planning efforts that we were engaged in that preceded this emergency was the resiliency strategy. We literally had a community meeting kind of at the onstart of this whole current pandemic. I remember standing up and mentioning that this was something that might trigger the need to kind of implement some of the things that we were talking about quickly. And of course, that's where we find ourselves. But that obviously that's been kind of, put on hold because we've been trying to manage the current emergency in front of us. But that was something that we were really dedicating time and energy to, was moving that resiliency strategy forward to help us address what at the time was the major issue was the public safety power shutoffs. We actually have since been notified by PG&E that they're doing quite a bit of planning work, and they anticipate, based on historical forecasts, that we can experience in upwards of 3 public safety power shutoffs per year going forward for a number of years. And there's a number of strategies that they're proposing to deal with that. Such as obviously doing a lot more tree trimming work. I'm sure you've seen all the PG&E tree trimming crews out there in our area, pretty busy at work. But I just want to point that out, that was something we probably would have made a lot more progress on by now had it not been for this last month spending it on this other emergency that we're confronted with. So I just wanted to point that out, that was a big part of this climate emergency was working on that the resiliency plan and have that in place. So I'm sorry, disrupted your flow, Kevin. I just thought
I didn't have a flow. It talks about building efficiency, and one of the things here, of course, is the all reach electric code. We kind of heard some opinions on that one. Water use, electric use. Maybe a strategy might be is, I can go through these and just look for ones that seem like they won't require a ton of staff time and or money. And then I can also do an update on which ones we're actually doing already. And then we could maybe go from there. I meant to send this out earlier, so I apologize for that. But I think the intent of our adding sustainability is really to focus on these things that are in the resolution. One of the things that we did do, and I haven't heard back yet, is we had a energy audit completed for City Hall, and that's being offered through the county's program. But we haven't gotten the data back yet, but they did come and take a pretty good look at all our operations, the lighting, the water heating, maybe an opportunity for photovoltaic on the roof, the windows, things like that. So I'm still waiting, and I need to probably email them. It's been a little bit of a time, but like a proposal where they can combine rebates and other programs that we can actually, upgrade City Hall, and they provide an analysis of how much energy would be saved as a result of that. So if it's, some of them, there's some real, I hate to say it, but low-hanging fruit. They always use that. I'm not a fan of that phrase, but anyway, there is quite a bit of that at City Hall. So there's probably going to be some projects that will really not cost a lot and will have a really quick payback. So I'm going to put that on my list to follow up on that and report back on that one. I think that's a good topic for this this particular standing item on this committee. So
Now, Kevin, that's on our dime, of course. There's no grants that come with that.
some of them
Right.
they do. Some do. The lighting one. There's one program that really is funded through PG&E, and it's mostly lighting. So they get paid by the amount of energy they save by swapping out lighting in office buildings. And I did
Right.
I did a ton of those in Windsor and businesses in town there. So that didn't really cost anything. And I think we have some older lighting in City Hall.
Right.
But before we would do anything, we would just get kind of a report from them, and they would identify which ones make the most sense. Some may cost us some money. We don't have to do those. We can choose not to, but we would obviously pick the ones that make the most sense with the quickest payback, the ones that have rebates and other funding available to pursue. But once we get the report, I can bring it to this committee, and then we can bring that on to council. We can talk about what they're suggesting. I mean, it's an old building, it's not efficient. There might come to a point where we'll say how much money do we want to put into it, but I suspect there's going to be some pretty cheap ones that will help save money.
Yeah. Well, it would be nice too if Jane Elias could guide us through that report. I'm sure she'd love to. She might know of grants coming down the road that we don't know about yet.
Yeah, it was Jane's, someone who works for Jane who actually came and did the energy audit. I think I wish they would get back to me, but again, I will reach out to them.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure they're going in 18 different directions as well. So,
yeah.
Okay. Marion, you done, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm done.
Good. Okay. I think, Marion, I'd like to suggest that you and I take a look at that. And for the next meeting, we could come with some type of, we'll come with some type of feedback for you. Would that work?
That's perfect. And I'll do the same. And I can, David probably has some ideas too. And maybe we can prioritize by, again, minimal staff time and minimal, I don't know if we're going to be interested in any financial investment at this point, but maybe we'll just rank them as for staff time or some way that, the budget's going to be. Yeah.
Well, I think rank them by, categorize them with low hanging fruit. The ones we can accomplish right away, let's do it. And the ones that are going to be, like the REACH code, I mean, that doesn't have to be done anytime soon. But I mean, let's pick the low hanging fruit first. I think.
Okay. That sounds good.
Mary Ann, anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay, so let's move to an update on the 6 Acres Water Company and the South Cloverdale Water Company.
Yes. So you may recall, this is actually a standing item from the previous members. You may recall one of the 6 Acres residents came to the council meeting a couple months ago and was a little upset and kind of said that we, had kind of reached an impasse, and that was really kind of a shock to me because we had sent them back. We've been going back and forth with the agreement, this pre-annexation agreement, and I actually thought we had made some concessions. So I was kind of surprised to hear that reaction, but that is the reaction. So after that meeting, I reached out to them and said, hey, we're still wanting to talk to you. We thought we made some progress, and since that time, Jose has reached out to their attorney, and the lines of communication are open again. They indicated that there was some agreed upon deal points in the the agreement that we weren't honoring. We have a meeting this week internally to go through those with me and David and Mark and probably Eric. They're under the impression that we are not honoring what we agreed to in the past. I don't know if that's true or not. They're from several years ago. So we will look through. One of the big sticky points on the whole deal is that bridge down Lyle Lane, where there's some equipment at the end of that Mark needs to have his crews go down there every so often to maintenance. And he's concerned that that bridge isn't strong enough. Obviously, a bridge is a very expensive item. So he's been holding kind of steady to try to do something with that bridge to make it, more suitable for his use. After discussing it with him, we may have another way to go where he can get back there a different way, but that's going to require an easement or a right of way for city crews to go through. I think is it Church Lane, David, or there's another road back there? Yeah. So
No,
that's
actually, I think there's 3 roads. The one with the bridge, then the other one just past the vineyard, and then one off of Church Lane.
yeah.
But I don't want to see Public Works hold this thing up. Especially if there's an alternative route to get back there to do maintenance. And if it's an easement that's going to be required, then, everything is approved subject to everyone helping to get that easement in place.
Yeah, I'm at a point now where I just want to move it forward. I think they deserve to at least, the council is going to have to, take a look at that area and understand that there's not going to be a lot of money to fix it up to what our current standards are. And, if that's acceptable, then that's fine. If it isn't, then it, really shouldn't be part of our sphere of influence, because being in the sphere of influence, assumes that those properties will be in the city at some point. So,
well, I don't have any problem with it being in the sphere of influence, and I don't have a problem moving forward as long as the vineyard is part of that annexation. If it's just the street, forget it. There's no benefit for us to do that. But the future benefit of a housing development down that road is most definitely of interest.
Yeah.
Can I'd have to say that for me, the interest for me would be to fix those water systems. Neither one of them are working, South Cloverdale or the 6 acres, very well. So I texted James Gore last meeting I had with him, and I don't know, David, were you in on that meeting with Tennis Wick and James Gore?
Yes.
On 6 acres, okay. So maybe now they could be pushed a little further if we just sort of approached him with the idea, well, maybe we'll just take it out of our sphere of influence, then it's your friggin' problem.
Well,
maybe not. But what I want to know, bottom line wise, is I just want to know, there's been numbers thrown around left and right. Last one I remember is it was going to cost the city over $600,000 to do this. If that's the case, then no, we're not going to do this. We can't. We don't have the money unless we get a grant or unless they get a grant. So I'm just curious about, I think there's not enough that we know about it quite, but I know that I'm sick. I'm sure they're sick of waiting, and I'm sick of James Gore and the county ignoring their responsibility in this.
Well, more than the county, it's the state as well. I mean,
I agree.
I've got a letter here dated April the 6th, 2020, and I think everybody was pretty much copied on it from Brian Kinwell from the Water Control Board, and it's I don't like the tone of his language at all.
No.
The last sentence in the first paragraph where the division strongly encourages the state. Well, you know what? You sat on your ass for 20 years and ignored this problem, not doing an inspection, not coming out and citing them or making them clean it up. And now all of a sudden, Cloverdalians have to spend $600,000 because you didn't do something about it for 20 years. I'm sorry. I don't buy that.
Do we have a baseline cost? Do we even know what it would cost?
Well, I want them, like you, Marianne, to have clean water. And if we have to stub it out and put a meter at the end of their street and then they could tap into it, that's fine. As far as I'm concerned, we fulfilled our obligation. We're giving them clean water.
Agreed.
But for the city to take on a $600,000 project for no fault of our own, and I just can't get behind that. And then they're threatening us? I mean, come on.
Well, there's another wrinkle to this, which pertains to that letter you mentioned, Gus, is the forced consolidation.
Yes.
I'm not super familiar with that, but the gist of it is the state will somehow force us to give them water or make them, become a part of the city. We're now investigating what that actually means, and what would be to the city's advantage if that happened versus us just doing a normal annexation route. I'm inclined to just move this thing along and just with our eyes open. I mean, David, I think probably more about there was a grant that was available to put the sewer and water in. So that seemed to be covered, but in terms of all the other infrastructure deficiencies, that's on us. That's my understanding.
So the roads, sidewalks, all of that would be on us.
Yes.
That's right. Maybe just from a big picture perspective, what we've been actively negotiating with 6 Acres community area water company representatives is really just a pre-annexation agreement. It is basically the tool to say we agree on these basic factors for us to then proceed to consider annexation. So, there's really no significant risk in moving forward with a pre-annexation agreement. I think they retained an attorney that through the state that has a real strong kind of community perspective, and that's been part of the issue. Is she wrote a pre-annexation agreement that kind of put the full burden of the project on the city, and of course we tried to make it more reasonable in terms of not obligating this council or any future councils or the city in any manner that would require significant resources from the city. And so we were always clear on that, because I think that council was pretty clear that we didn't want the city general fund or other dollars going into the project. But with that said, what we are hoping to achieve with the pre-annexation agreement is that there's enough language to support annexation that the state would feel comfortable in funding kind of the next phase, which the next phase was to actually start doing some of the more detailed improvement plans. So the engineering work that would then support a formal annexation application. I think, Gus, I know you mentioned, our interest in part is to facilitate the area to the east of 6 Acres, the vineyard area, for possible future development. Initially, they were looking at how they could go forward. And it was a little bit complicated because the state was willing to fund the 6 Acres kind of piece of it, but not the other vineyard piece of it. And so they were kind of internally trying to work that out in terms of how they could move forward together. My sense is that the Lyle family, who owns the vineyards, would, really annexation of 6 Acres is predicated on them annexing. And so my sense would be that they would either file an application, concurrently with the city as with 6 Acres, or shortly thereafter. I mean, it kind of makes sense that they go together, though they may be kind of technically two separate projects from an annexation perspective. And then the Lyle project would then have to, like any other private development, provide plans and both a subdivision map and improvement plans to support, future infrastructure in that area. And a lot of it, the language that the attorney was really seeking in this pre-annexation agreement was language that was going to give the residents of the water company, great comfort. So it was kind of, they were really seeking language like the city would, never engage in code enforcement. And I mean, just things that we really can't even reasonably agree to. I mean, we will say, we came up with language that I think works, but that was kind of the nature of the negotiations. It was very, very one-sided and put the burden on the city. And we were just trying to try to make it balanced. And it was as if we were being told we were being unfair. Granted, the discussion over the bridge was probably a little bit of stickiness, I think, just from the perspective that our city engineer feels it's important that's part of the 6 acres annexation. But I did personally share with Sage and some of the other representatives that could be handled down the road, because the bridge really doesn't serve 6 acres. Because they're on the west side, and any future development could trigger the improvement of that bridge, and that by doing more engineering work and improvement plans, we could then identify what really needs to have, what do we really truly need in terms of supporting infrastructure improvements in that area, and it would be identified as part of that. But it would, the pre-annexation agreement would put in place enough language that the state had indicated would enable them to kind of fund that next phase, which even then doesn't quite get us to annexation, but it gets us a step closer. So that's kind of where we're at, and at least the hope was we could bring it forward to council, and there was enough support, so long as we're not putting additional city funds towards it. The grant pays for it. We could get additional engineering work completed, which we think would be valuable anyways, just to have the benefit of that engineering work prepared, because it would help guide us ultimately at some point in the future.
Well, I don't have a problem if it's coming in 2 separate phases, the annexation first, and then we'll talk about hooking up to the water system. If I'm hearing you correctly, that's the game plan. My other big fear, and Mary Ann, you can share this because I know you're probably thinking the same thing. At some point, LAFCO and James Gore are going to say, you know what, why don't you take it all in, take in Church Lane and everything. And, we just can't do that, because those folks are also starving for good, clean water.
Yes, they are.
Well, you raise a good question, Mayor and Council Member. In fact, last week, Kevin and our city engineer had a call that was scheduled by South Cloverdale Water Company. They're engaging in the same process as 6 acres went through in terms of a preliminary engineering study. So they're starting the same process that 6 acres did about 2 years ago now, with kind of doing the engineering work. Of course, I think it's valuable from the perspective that it informs them about what it would cost and what are the options for water service. No obligations on the city's part, of course, but again, they're kind of going that same route as 6 acres has.
Where is that well now, David? Do you know?
The one that serves 6 acres?
No, the one that serves South Cloverdale Water Company.
I'm not actually certain where that well is located. I thought it was on the west side of Highway 101, unlike the one for 6 acres. But yeah. I don't know its exact location.
Okay. Well, maybe they can just drop a new well. I don't know. Well, definitely, I guess I take it too personal. It's just frustrating when somebody has their hand in my pocketbook and I'm not getting anything out of it. At least give me the annexation of the vineyard, and later on down the road, I might be able to pull some houses out of it and get something for the city. But just to lay out $600,000 for one, and Lord knows what's coming down the pike with South Cloverdale, it's a tough pill to swallow.
I'll tell you what, I'll try to get an idea of what the costs are. There's an annexation application, there's maps, there's the CEQA work, and I wouldn't suspect all of that would be 600. I know that number's going around, but I'm gonna go.
I think
do
it's
some-
more.
Okay, well, I'll do what I can for the next update to try to understand what that is and bring that forward.
Didn't we do a financial feasibility study on that, or were we just talking about it?
We were talking about it. We
Okay.
didn't do one for this one. We did one for Baumgartner, but we have that annexation policy. That annexations over 10 acres require that cost benefit analysis, or
Okay.
it can be waived by the council.
Gotcha. Mary Ann, anything?
No, I know it's something we have to deal with. I mean, we've been talking about this for 20 years, but a lot lately. So I texted James Gore that I want to talk to him, so he'll probably call me tonight later. And this is one of the things I'm going to bring up is maybe it's time for us to stand up. I know everybody's busy, but this could be a long range goal. He's going to want us, of course, to take the whole ball of wax. And we'll talk some more. I'll let you know what he says. If he does call me back, I don't know.
Mary Ann, you might mention that the South Cloverdale Water Company is also in the same boat. They're just starting, so that we got two big ones right next to each other.
Well, look at how long I've been waiting for that walkway on First Street Bridge. They've been told the last few years, yep, this summer. No, still no walkway.
Well, you've been in politics long enough to know how that song goes, Mary Ann. Come on.
Yeah, I know, but God damn it, I wrote that first letter almost 25 years ago. That's a long time to wait.
Yeah. Well,
Especially since I know the money's there. The money is already in the bank.
Well, with Flint, Michigan really upsets me because we have political folks that knew something was wrong with the water and they did nothing.
Yeah.
And while in the same situation here, to some extent, the county knows that water is really not good. They even know further north up McCrae Road that water is probably not any good in those wells. And they continue to put their head in the sand. And I feel comfortable that the city of Cloverdale is saying, look, here's a hookup, here's a meter, take all the clean water you want. We're not depriving you of that. It may not be the way you want it, but at least you can drink it. So
no, I don't have a problem with it. Solves that problem.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's out on McCrae is bad. And and that's the one that is probably, quite honestly, the worst one that we've got. You remember that baby that almost died from fecal contamination. So that was just because of the way they've got the wells and they've got the sewer, the septics.
Right.
And that made me kind of crazy. I mean, we're poisoning babies. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's definitely a tough situation, and nobody wants to take that on. And it's we could talk forever about that.
I know.
I mean, the people that live there are fighting it. You would think they'd welcome it because it's going to improve the real estate values of the property. But no, they're fighting it because they don't want to have it on their tax roll every year.
Well, and also they don't want to give up their goats.
Whatever. Anything else on that one? No. Well, Kevin, thank you. I know it's really involved, and I know it's difficult trying to make those folks happy. And but just do the best you can and bring it forward, and we'll let the council weigh in on it.
Okay. Sounds
good. Next is an update on Sonoma County Transit Route 68.
This is this was again from the previous committee members. We did sit down with Brian Albee of Sonoma County Transit and outline a number of observations and requests of changes that we would like to see him do. David was part of that meeting and Councilmember Cruz. I think we were pretty clear what we wanted. I sent him an email today and asked him, hey, how's it going with that? And he really said we're not going to do anything with that until the fall. And he did provide some other points about transit service in Sonoma County right now in light of COVID-19.
Right.
So we can, I don't know, I can send that out to the council. It's just 8 points of talking about changes in routes and times and things like that.
I said that, Kevin.
Oh, you did?
Kevin, you know, you can do that when you get to it. I think that's low priority. If he's not going to even be able to talk to us about it until the fall, don't even waste your time sending it out to the council.
Okay, well, it's two different things. We sat down with, I think some pretty legitimate things that he agreed to, but he's not going to touch it for a while. And then in addition to that, he sent out the update about the routes, which it sounds like David already sent that out. So we're good.
Right. Mary Ann, anything?
No, I think that's something we can deal with when school gets back in and kids have got to go down to JC and stuff like that. They're not doing it now, so.
Okay, item number D, I think we've already talked about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move to item E, dog park location.
Not a lot to report. I did meet with Elsa and her partner. I forget the other gal's name. Apologize for that. We went over a number of locations that she went around and identified. I provided her with contact of the owner's information based on the tax rolls for each one of those properties. I sent her an email in advance of this meeting. I haven't heard back. So it's all the same ones, Gus. Nothing different from what's been discussed for many years. She did have some new energy for it, so I provided her again with the information of the owners. She was going to go down to the Dante and talk to I forget his name.
Wait,
But-
let me shut my mic.
So again, I sent her an email, said, hey, do you need anything else or what's going on? I haven't heard back. I don't know if she's, I don't know what her status is, but if I hear anything, I mean, we can, if you want to keep this as a standing item, we can do that. I'm happy to continue to work on it a little bit. But that's kind of it for that one.
Question.
Yeah, I think it should be on the standing item. And Mary Ann, what do you think? But I think just for a placeholder so that we don't forget about it. So,
Yeah, it can stay on. What are you guys thinking about the city purchasing the car wash location? Is that what's running around in your head?
no.
Then why talk to court?
Just in case he lets the dog owners association or whatever they are lease his property for maybe like $1 a year and open up a dog park.
Has anybody gone to talk to court?
I don't know what.
Elsa was going to do that, and that was exactly what Gus said, was really just to see if he'd be willing to, maybe do something for very little money if volunteers would make the improvements.
Well, it's a concept. Can't go in the bar anymore.
I
Bad.
still like.
Huh?
I still like the Vintage Meadows behind the restrooms there, but I still think that's a good spot.
And there's still all that Caltrans laying behind Clark Street Park.
Yeah.
That could be big trouble back there, though.
Just the parking issues as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. In addition, the to the right of way area, the Caltrans area, and the car wash area, the other site that we talked about, which may come up again, is on the Bumgarner Ranch parcel. Their current development proposal doesn't include any open space or parks. So that might be something that the Planning Commission and or the council can certainly request when it comes forward, is identification of, either open space or park area, including a potential site for a dog park. And that was the other kind of a message to Elsa, that it's nice that there's a community advocate that wanted to follow the planning process to get involved and come and advocate for a potential dog park on part of that open space that is, would be, set aside by the developer.
David, I don't know if I told you this. I had a conversation with Jake, who's the proponent of that Baumgartner Ranch, and he didn't say, even though the hills there are shown as private, kind of fenced off, no one go in there. I said, one of our issues is you're not doing any recreation here, and I hope that you could think about that. And he said, I'm not against having that hill as open space trails. He just, of course, as usual, doesn't want anything to do with constructing it or maintaining it. But I did ask him, is this a request of the Baumgartner family who's going to continue to live there? And he said, no, not at all. It's just he really wants the city to take the lead in identifying, an open space nonprofit or something. But I think the possibility is there. I said, well, maybe we can condition the project to leave that door open, and then we can work on it, because I don't know, because he's getting kind of anxious to get approved, and we're getting close to hearing time. So I said, hey, what about a condition of approval? It says we're going to leave that door open. We can talk about it later, and he's okay with that. So I saw the plans. I was kind of disappointed because it looked like he just didn't want anything to do with people going up on the hill at all. But I don't think that's the case. So there's something there that maybe we can work with him on.
Because ideally, you combine a dog park area adjacent to a larger open space where hiking and maybe even mountain biking might be allowed, so that the activities can be done in conjunction with one another. There's some great examples out there where you have a fenced in area for it's kind of the formal off leash dog park, but then you've got the trails and the open space where folks who like to actually walk with their dog on leash kind of have that opportunity. So you have those two together, and it could really be a nice amenity for the future residents, but also the existing residents of our community.
Yeah. But unfortunately, that's down the road a ways, and I don't know if any of the other sites would be a little quicker, and we don't necessarily have to be locked into one neither, So.
Right. I mean, the thing with Court's property, there could be, even as simple as just a use agreement that, doesn't, if the property owner is not inclined to sell it, that just enter into kind of a like a use agreement or a lease agreement or a license agreement where it's used for a dog park for a certain period of time. So there is that option. The issue is we haven't, I'm not sure that Court has a good opinion of city staff. So city staff hadn't, taken the action to reach out to them, and that's why I think Elsa said she might be able to, make that connection.
Yeah.
I have a question for, say Court does say yes,
Mm-hmm.
For X amount of dollars. So you got a piece of land there that's very developable. It'd be great for low-income housing, multi-story. It's a nice, big, deep lot. But if you have dogs that are peeing and pooping for, like, say, 3 or 4 years, 5 years, maybe 6 years, is he going to run into any kind of a issue about contaminated soil if he tries to sell it at that point?
I wouldn't anticipate. I mean, we shouldn't rule anything out. But if, for instance, the city was the leasing party, and of course it could be a nonprofit that has parks management as one of their missions. But I have not seen any data that suggests that dog parks contribute to contamination. Usually you do have, some basic amenities there, including, a garbage can and, doggy dispenser bags. and you hope that people utilize those resources. But there would be some maintenance that would be required to just ensure that any.
Yeah, I was just curious because I'd hate to talk him into something, and then a couple of years down the road he tracks me down and he said, "You pay for this now."
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
It where the site's located, kind of in the center part of town, with the parking area next to the Boys and Girls Club, and being right off the boulevard, and then access via the Tarman track, just seemed like, I think, it kind of meets a lot of check boxes for folks to be a dog park. And I think there was also just discussion about which I shared with you, Councilmember Brigham, is looking at possibly would this site support a skate park, and maybe there would be an opportunity rather than the city again taking the lead in terms of being maybe the owner. Maybe it's a partnership with the Boys and Girls Club, and maybe the Boys and Girls Club would be interested in doing a lot line adjustment to expand their property to include some area where a skate park could be built again. And then where we could contribute to maybe the design or the engineering and planning work or something like that. So there's opportunities, I guess, that we could explore, but it just depends on perspective of the property owner and whether he's interested in that.
Okay.
Well, while you seeing how you brought up skate parks, and I'm not going to get into details because I know it's not agendized, but I ran into Chief Jenkins this morning down at ACE, and I was asking him about the potential site of the new gymnasium. And I asked him, is this the only location for an emergency vehicle entrance and exit? And he said, when he looked at it and approved everything, the skate park wasn't even planned to be there. He said, but most definitely it can be moved anywhere. And then he also said it could be part of the skate park. He said, if there was just a flat concrete area without any dips and jumps, that we could just swing a fire truck in there, an emergency vehicle, it could be part of the landscape for the skate park, which I thought was kind of interesting. We might be able to look at that the way it's designed. So,
right, and Mayor, we had it as part of the design for the extension of Washington Street. There was actually a driveway that was situated just on the northerly side of where the skate park was proposed, where it would have provided a driveway into to the back, most, I guess, southerly side of Washington school site. So, we had actually thought about that, or at least I won't take credit. Our engineering team at Brelgy and Race did. So they were trying to be very accommodative in terms of supporting access to the school, but I think the district had kind of a different perspective on that.
Yeah. Well, and not to belabor the point, just something to keep in the back of our mind that, it could be there if it's a part of the skateboard park. I mean, it doesn't have to be moved. And we gave them the assurances because, quite frankly, they don't want it that close to the school. It's quite obvious. But, giving them the assurances that it would be closed during school hours, it would be closed during big weekend events being held at the school. But it'd be open in the evenings, open on the weekends, and it shouldn't interfere with their school at all. So,
Right.
Can I ask
anyhow.
a question?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to discuss this until I sold that property. So now I can get in on these discussions about the property over there. I have never heard why it is that the school doesn't want the skate park there? I see skate parks all over by schools. What is their reason?
That's a 5-hour conference that you could have with City Manager Kelly someday. I don't know, Mary Ann, that there is a good reason, to be honest with you. David, do you?
Well, I mean, the stated reason was that so there was kind of two really. Is they want to build a new gym, and they want to have that visibility from from the kind of eastern side of the school, and I guess the perspective was that the skate park might kind of take away from the appearance of the gym. And then the other one was around this access issue, was that they would like to kind of have an emergency road access that goes right through the middle where the skate park was proposed.
But that can be mitigated the way it sounds.
Yes,
And
I think.
Yeah, and so there really is no good reason. It's just they're being kind of pissy about it.
There's been some challenges in collaborating with the school district on the development of that whole area. From looking at drainage to extension of Washington Street and right of way, and then the skate park. So I think we've got through some of that, but there was kind of a change in the course as we moved forward. And I think I want to recognize the comments from Sue Dahl, who took minutes at some of the other meetings, and she reflected that there was some concern about adults that might use the skate park too. That was, but again, I think Mayor, I thought you addressed that by indicating we would increase patrols, we could have signage, and certainly, I mean, from most people's perspective, there's nothing wrong with necessarily being an adult and wanting to use a skate park.
No, but the big reassurance we gave them is that the park would be closed during school hours, and if we have to do that for a while until everybody gets comfortable, that's fine.
Right.
So
I think that's a fair. That's a nice way of compromising. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the direction was recommended by the joint city school subcommittee, and we as staff, we had fully planned on bringing that forward for discussion. And we were originally targeting April to do that, but given the current emergency that we're in, we just hadn't brought that forward. But we will bring that back when it's time, and council will then have the opportunity to weigh in on the subcommittee's recommendation.
That's good.
okay, how about a community development planning log update?
Yeah, no real new applications. Again, I've been talking about it a long time, but Baumgartner has completed CEQA. There were some comments received. Those have been addressed. Right now, we're just kind of awaiting a little bit more paperwork from them and bringing it to Planning Commission and then onto the council. I guess the good news is that he's still raring to go. And I asked him, point blank, is the money drying up, given this current situation? He said, nope, I have all my financing in place and I'm eager to go. And, I did convey to him, again, the concern about not really any recreation opportunities on site. And that's when we had that whole conversation that we just did. So the door's still open in my view. Alexander Valley Wellness, I've been following up right now. This agreement we've been working on for quite some time is with Myers Nave, and we expect that back any day, and hopefully that's done or close to being done. We have some.
Are you saying they can move forward soon?
I hope so. I mean, we still have some issues that have to do with the school, the citrus fair, and things like that are a little bit, I would say, out of our control. But I don't see why we couldn't get them to planning commission and on to council for approval. We may have to punt on some of these things through conditions of things that will be done subsequent to their approval. But you know, it's a great application they put together. We've been wrangling over this development agreement, and again, it's on my list for this week to light a fire and get our draft back from. It's in our court right now, so we're I made a promise to Debbie that I would continue to work as hard as I can, as fast as I can to get this thing through. So I'm trying to do that, and so hopefully that will happen. Again, the sequel is done. We did the 30-day notice for that.
Great.
There was no comments received, and so that was good. It saves a little bit of time and shuts the door on potential any lawsuits. I don't think it's going that way, but typically that would be the first step in someone challenging the project. Would be a letter on the sequel review, which we got none. The 25 lot subdivision for the tribe on the south side is / annexation is still moving forward. I talked to Kevin Doble last week. He's wanting to do some sequel work on his own, and we're working through that right now. I don't think it's a real time saver or money saver for him, but that's my opinion. But they're still anxious to do that project. Again, we haven't received any new applications. I don't know that we would how we would receive them at the current moment, but we haven't been discussing with anyone anything either. The Taylor Lynn 2, which is across from Ace Hardware, is ready to go to Planning Commission. So I'm going to probably be working with Irene to see if we can pull off a Planning Commission. I think it might be just a little more difficult than the council, only because we're reviewing plans. But other cities, I think Sebastopol did one, so I think we're going to try to do that. I'm just a little hesitant to bring a project as big as Baumgartner through this type of process, where there's going to be pages and pages of plans and potentially a fair amount of public input. But we'll see. He's not exactly ready right now, but he's getting real close. So.
Well, I agree. A project that big would really be difficult to do with teleconferencing, but by the same token, we don't want anything to hold that up. And somehow we'll find a way to get it done.
Yeah, and we've been having weekly phone calls with the applicant, and he's getting anxious. We're getting close. We're waiting for a couple more things. We'll see how this whole thing plays out. If we can get him, there's some noticing requirements, so we have to do that. But yeah, no, we're eager to get that project.
Well, and I think, Kevin, you had mentioned, nothing new is coming across your desk. I think it's important, and I'm not saying this for any particular reason, that we just make sure we keep our voicemails checked on our city phones and the room in the mailbox, and just a good introduction, guiding people where to go if they have a project, I think. So.
Yeah, and I put out that memo. I mean, if someone wanted to apply for a planning permit, I would certainly go meet them.
Right.
There's no issue with that. It's
anything to get out of the house, right?
Well, our voicemails do go to our emails, so we have that, which is really nice. There are a few people getting kind of eager to get some building permits. I got an email today regarding a home remodel. We're following the county's guidelines on what kind of building permits we're issuing. I think Mark Harris is being pretty flexible. I think he said the other day he issued one that may not have been absolutely considered an emergency, but he did it. It was a simple one, so I was happy to hear he did that. But we really are following the guidance of the shelter at home order, and also we're pretty much doing what every other city is doing in terms of building permits. They can be issued, but there's certain criteria. It has to be emergency. If if the tree falls on your house or your electric is in bad shape, or it's for affordable housing, we're doing it. And I'm leaving a lot of discretion up to Mark Harris too, because he's very familiar with the order, and really he's the one who has to go out and go into people's houses. So
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to make one comment.
sure.
Yeah, my mic's turned on. I know there's a big kick up about the skate park and the school and all that, but I have to say, I really, Debbie and the clinic have been trying to get this together now for years and years. And I'm hoping that there's some way we can allow, even if those guys keep arguing about something, at least let the clinic start to get built.
I think there is a way. We're as David said, David and I and Mark for some time, we're banging our heads against the wall. I got to tell you, there's some very obvious solutions that people don't necessarily want to partake in for whatever reason, and so I'm envisioning bringing it forward with not everything completely worked out, unless David doesn't want to do that. I mean, there may be a good reason, or Jose may not want to do that, but we may have to condition things for further negotiation. But
Well, the thing I don't get at all is, wouldn't it be to the school district's huge advantage to be able to just upsize the drainage off their property, which is substantial, through pipes that are going to be going underneath there anyway for the medical center and stuff? Couldn't they just hook in? And wouldn't that save them a shitload of money?
But council member, you're in my opinion, you're absolutely right on. In fact, I sent Superintendent Decker a copy of an email from our engineering consultant at Brelgy and Race, and Brelgy and Race, they typically work for private developers, and so they are very experienced in this type of development. And they've told us many times that this is what they do, is they collaborate with the adjacent property owners when they plan improvements, so that they appropriately design the infrastructure to support all of the surrounding. So it ties in and it works basically. And I asked our engineer to reach out to their engineer and try to get the data.
The school or Debbie?
No, because he's Brelgy and Race is also the engineer for Alexander Valley Wellness. And
okay, all right.
So they understand they need to put in storm drainage improvement for the wellness site. And then have that be incorporated into the extension of Washington Street. And we did reach out early on to the school district to try to accommodate and basically, and that was part of the conversation when we had the joint meeting was, basically you could tie in, we have to, we need to get your data in terms of what you're seeing in terms of runoff, so that it can be sized appropriately, and that there's usually a cost sharing agreement that goes along with it. So if you use 20%, you pay 20% of the cost or whatever it requires to kind of upgrade or to upsize. And I'm not certain why, but they seem very reticent to want to engage in that discussion. And to me, it absolutely seems like it's really to their benefit to look at that as an option. But most recently, the comment has been, "Oh no, we've got it all taken care of, so we don't need that." But I also heard that there were some concerns about their existing storm drain, which really lands in the middle of where Washington Street would be extended, and so that's been kind of the other issue was trying to work through the storm drainage issue to help solve the extension of the street issue, but then we also wanted to try to address the right of way. And I'll take responsibility for trying to take the resources to try to get that work, to help get that work done, so that we would be able to bring forward kind of a complete project. But my sense is that that they're reticent, and I'm not sure if it's because it means that we'd be asking them for a cost share to do that. But council could say, gosh, you know what, staff, you size it appropriately, you'll accommodate the storm drainage, and the city pay for it. But it just seems like it makes sense to ask them to participate in that process. I did copy you, Gus, on my email this morning. All right, copy anyways.
You did. Thank you, David. Yes, I got that.
I hope my tone and tenor was one of collaboration and support.
And this was an email about to and from to the school board. Who are you talking about?
No, it was an email to the superintendent, basically indicating that we need his permission to get data from the school district's engineer on the storm drainage flows from the school district site.
Ah, okay.
So that we could finish. I say we, really, it's partly our responsibility, partly the responsibility of the wellness center to complete the storm drainage work that is important for the planning of that site. But also, we're doing the work to try to relocate the storm drain on the Healdsburg Avenue side. And that needs to be kind of sized appropriately too. So that's why we're trying to figure it all out, is to be able to, make sure that they're, the last thing we want to do is undersize it and then, put it in and we determine, gosh, we should have put a much larger storm drain in. So
it's really, my take is they didn't think they had a problem with storm drains. And if you just go out there, it's just so obvious that there's the water coming off the school just drains right into the Times Square property. It
has for years. Yeah.
And now there's an opportunity with the wellness center putting a storm drain there. I mean, it's so teed up and in my mind just so perfect for them. A solution I don't understand. And it's about money, I'm sure, as David said.
Well, remember when we did Reuser's project out there, and he, I'm sure, still hasn't gotten almost all of his money back. But remember when he did, Gus, we were there then, I think, when he was pretty much forced to oversize everything, but with the understanding that as people hooked up past him, that he would be reimbursed.
Yes, and we let, I'm talking way before David.
Yes. Oh no, this was a while ago.
Yeah, we let some people hook up, and I don't think we collected accordingly. Because I remember correspondence maybe about 15 years ago going back and forth between Bruce and the city, where we owed him some money. I don't know where that ever landed. So
I don't know that Bruce would have ever made a stink about it, but he was very logical about it. Of course, he didn't want to spend the money, but on the other hand, he knew the situation, so he paid for it all, and then was supposed to be paid back by any other developers that came past him or needed that.
Right.
But I just don't want to see the wellness center held up for an argument between a skate park and the school district, or the.
Right.
And I don't think we will. We're resolved to bring it forward, and really the last step is to finalize the development agreement, and that would be part of the entitlements. This council would consider an ordinance, for the approving the development agreement, along with the major design review. So those are really the two entitlements, and as Kevin mentioned, SEEK was done. So, we just need to get the draft, kind of the final draft of the development agreement to Debbie and her lawyer. I mean, I will say, their attorney, he's pretty tough, and there's usually a little bit of back and forth on some of the language and terms, but we have no intent of holding that up. It just won't be as complete a project as we had hoped, by having all of the improvements, kind of put in place up front. But we're going to try to have it be done so that it's safe and bring it forward, recognizing that these are just issues that need to be worked out on the storm drainage side and the extension of the street.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you, David. If we're done with that, let's move right along. Information only memos. I see none. Future agenda items. I'm not sure if this belongs on this subcommittee or not, but last couple of days I've been riding around, and I happened to be riding down across from the Bear Republic on Sandholm.
Mm-hmm.
And behind where the saw shop is, in the back end of Payless Storage. And the gate was open, and I noticed, I'm going to say a huge pile of tires that were apparently getting, just being stored there, rubber tires. And I'm not sure if we have anything in the city code about the storage of tires on city property. Well, I shouldn't say on city property, within the city limits. Anyhow.
We can take a look at that, Gus.
All right. And if you were going to Bear Republic and you swing down the street, instead of turning into their driveway right, if you took a left, you'll see a big chain link fence. And if you look in between the slats, you can see these two big piles of rubber tires. And I'm only concerned about it from a fire standpoint. I mean, those things burn forever. Mm-hmm. So.
And mosquitoes.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So
I'm not
anyhow.
In the city yet, Gus.
That's just outside the city limits, I think.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Is it? Okay. Well, nevertheless, we can surely get gore on it.
Mm-hmm.
So
we can make a referral to code enforcement at the county.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if that's one of the issues he has to clean up before before they give him a clean bill of health. Oh boy. Anything else for future agenda items, Mary Ann?
No, I think we got enough going on.
Okay. Pending items, good of the order. David, anybody?
No.
Irene, Mr. Cox, Sue? Okay, seeing none. I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting to June the 16th, 4 p.m. And it will probably be teleconferenced as well. Is that okay, Irene? Okay. Then in that case, meeting adjourned.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.